My current speech is over Black discrimination in public schools. The U.S. is suffering from Black discrimination in public schools. Black discrimination in schools goes all the way back to the late 1800s. An 8-year-old South African female student was being interviewed by Ted Koppel when she told him, "White people are better than Black people. White people know more, get more, and have more. I wish I was white, but I am not." In reply to this, Richard Beswick said that colored American students should not have to think this way. Could you imagine going to school every day thinking that you weren't good enough just because you were a different color? In 1954, the Supreme Court ruled that separate schools for whites and blacks were unequal. Public schools then began racial integration. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act was made shortly after, in 1964, to prohibit discrimination based on race, color, gender, and national origin. Cook stated in the book Teach, "Today we are faced with unprecedented cultural, ethnic, and racial diversities in our schools. Racism is the developed set of attitudes that includes antagonism based on the supposed inferiority of another group, based solely on skin color or race. Racism leads to discrimination, and discrimination is a huge concern in today's public schools. It's not only discrimination on race, it's discrimination on color, gender, age, and disabilities." Leanna Clausen from St. Mary's University wrote, "Discrimination can be particularly damaging to adolescent newcomers. Developing positive ethnic identity is a different task for adolescents facing stigmatization related to their ethnicity. In order to fully understand Black discrimination, I must inform you a little more on the laws that educators have to abide by. A few crazy statistics, and we are going to go inside of a scenario in which a colored student had been discriminated against in her public school. Most of the public school educators know their rights and won't test their limits, and are in the profession for the right reasons. But a few may complicate racial issues at times and abuse their rights as an educator. In the book Teach, it is stated by tradition, teachers are reasonably free to teach according to his or her best understanding or subject matter and instructional methods. But the content being taught must be relevant to what they are teaching and consistent with their teaching responsibilities. A teacher isn't allowed to promote their personal or political beliefs within inside the classroom, but they are all protected by the First Amendment. Educators are allowed to discuss personal opinions, but they cannot undermine authority or affect the working relationships within the schools." Cook, author of Teach, states, Teachers have many ethical and professional responsibilities to their students, the parents of the students, the school, and the district. The term for teaching diverse classes is called differentiated instructions. This has been the new up-and-coming important educational philosophy. It teaches the educators to recognize their students' abilities, interests, languages, learning profiles, and their background knowledge on everything. This is one reason why educators know that not all students can learn in the same manner. Cook says, "Equality is what we should strive for because it provides equal opportunity for all of our students to succeed. In order for students to be effective learners, they have to feel respected and feel like they matter to the teacher." In April 2013, Jeremy Tanner reported to Pix 11 that a 12-year-old colored girl was called out with a degrading name by her teacher. In this young girl's case, she didn't feel respected by her teacher or that the teacher really cared about her. One morning at school while the announcements were going on, she was talking, which she knew that she was not supposed to be doing while the announcements were going on. And instead of the teacher just quietly asking her not to talk during the announcements, she called her an offensive name. The little girl was humiliated in front of her entire 7th grade class. All her and her mother got was a half-hearted apology. Tony Abbott, an activist in their community, said that the teacher should be reprimanded for what she had done to the 12-year-old little girl, and that he was going to contact the Department of Education to have her terminated and her re-educated. The 12-year-old girl's case that I just discussed is only one tiny matter in public school discrimination statistics. Joy Resmovitz from the Huffington Post stated that public school students of color get more punishment than their white peers. According to the U.S. Department 2011-2012 Civil Rights Data Collection, black students are expelled at 3 times the rate of their white peers. 16% of black students and only 5% of white students are suspended in a year's time. 12% of black female students were suspended, which is much larger than the white female group of students with different ethnicities. And Rebecca Klein, she was another author for a Huffington Post article, and she wrote that she stated many of the same things that Joy stated, but she also stated that the disciplinary actions, such as suspension, can also lead to what is now called school-to-prison pipeline. This is when students get pushed out of the education system and pushed into the criminal justice system. With the laws that have been put into place today, public schools are much better about discrimination than in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, with having schools that are joined with ethnicities now. The First Amendment protects the rights of teachers, and the Title VI was put into place to protect the rights of the students. And it helps them not be discriminated against in the classrooms or just within their school. The U.S. citizens, educators, and students agree with the Title VI, whether they agree with it or not. This discrimination still arrives in some incidents today and is an issue that still needs to be solved and cared for in the U.S. public schools. Maybe now, after learning all of the things I have discussed, some people won't be so judgmental of some of the students' and teachers' unfortunate experiences in public schools. Let's hope the Department of Education takes all the future scenarios seriously and doesn't just roll their eyes at them or let them roll right off of their shoulders.